Morning everybody. It's another Monday Musings again today. Bit of a twist this time though, and I think I'll do a bit more in future. But we're going to talk and work at the same time. For today anyway, especially, I'm nursing a bit of a strain on my hip, pull muscle on my calf. So this morning, really, I'm working nice and light on the bag, just getting everything loose and moving and staying warm more than anything else. Ready to do some light stretching and mobility work a little bit later on. So yeah, Monday musings today, thinking about different stuff, to be honest. One of the things that I'm really wanting to speak about today, talk about, ramble about, is Kihon. Kihon as a practice, practicalities and impracticalities, different ways of working on Kihon, and what sort of works for people, what doesn't work for people, what I believe is practical, and what I believe is less so. And then also just discussing on from that aspect of Kihon, injury prevention and recovery after. So we'll have a look at that. Just while I have a loosen up on the back and throw some like fairly lazy techniques, to be fair. And yeah, we'll sort of work from there. So, starting off with Kihon. So, most people consider Kihon to be that thing that all karate people see doing in all forms of popular media. You've got lines and lines of students in their rows with their respective grades. There's obviously got to be order, throwing punches and kicks, doing blocks, combinations, in thin air. You know, it basically looks like a hyper-regimented and inefficient form of shadow boxing. Looks visually impressive though, especially in large numbers. You know, in that very end to the dragon style. In fact, in terms of skill levels, you tend to see that as well. You've got your more technically skilled guys at the front who are able to work on target with focus and whatever. And then you guys, especially youngsters at the back, arms and legs are going all over the place, need obviously a lot more work on. So yeah, Kihon in lines, where did it come from? I'm actually not entirely 100% sure. I'm fairly certain it came from the, as most traditions have come from, Funakoshi sort of influences to get people working in straight lines. It looks uniform, it looks nice, very appealing to Japanese schools especially. So yeah, I think that's where we sort of see it. It may have been around for longer, but if it was, it most likely wasn't utilised as heavily as it was now, particularly because, you know, if you look at karate today, you've got, you know, quite advanced downgrades that are hyper-religious almost when it comes to when it comes to Kihon, they'll do it religiously, day in and day out. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got people that won't do it at all, or you know, it's seen as more of a beginner's or even primarily a children's exercise. You know, having them all lined up in uniform, working on those basics, learning more control and power generation and, you know, things like that. I think I am more on that side, to be honest, these days. For the record, I still have Kihon in my classes, but my classes are very child heavy, and children, especially now post-COVID, which is a whole other subject to training itself, their general coordination and basic fitness skills, balance, agility, hand-eye skills, just general control of their bodies, much lower than it should be for their respective ages. So, you know, it's not as good, but there you go. So, yeah, I have Kihon in my syllabus. Patterns of movements they have to learn. It starts with single movements, builds up to combinations of techniques. I personally, recently, I took a lot of those patterns out of the syllabus, actually changed some of them to make a bit more sense combatively so that I could teach them on pads and in partner drills. I think for the longest time, especially myself, coming up through my Q grades, I was learning these patterns and I wasn't actually being taught what these patterns were for. So you just mindlessly do it. And you know, you get a fairly good basic technique, but there's a limit to it. Now I've been quite fortunate because I've always looked at other places and ways to train, so I've always done eating stuff, bags and whatnot. I've always enjoyed sparring. So, you know, that sort of helped me maintain some more use of the striking. That the fact that you scrap as well when you're a kid. So, you know, you sort of get used to what strikes work for you, what combinations and movements work for you, how your body best moves, that kind of thing. But, you know, I think there's limitations to it. So for me, I actually get more for myself now out of this kind of work. I've got no pattern or plan on what I'm doing on this bag at the moment. I'm just letting my body move. Mainly my focus is on this being loose, because at the moment I've got this bit of a twinge here, and I can't decide whether it's the hip flexor itself or the connective tissues for the quadricep, and that connection that's given in jib. And then I've obviously got the calf, which I've got to be really light on. So you'll notice on a lot of these front kicks I'm actually hitting it fairly flat and really not putting the foot into it, because at the moment that kind of tension there is a bit much. I can get it on that leg, but then the offset is I'm compensating and sort of rolling a little bit on this ankle, maintain my balance there. So either way, I'm still going to have to massage that hip later. But yeah, so Kihon, often seen as you know, the be all and end all, and the staple standard. You know, these people in these big stances, and then they're doing these movements and so yeah. Anyway, ramble. Let's stop the ramble. Well, listings, pros and cons, pros and cons. What are the pros to Kihon? It is fantastic for children. I've used Kihon in sessions in schools because it's a fantastic way to get everybody on the same page and give or take in the same kind of mindset. Okay? It's also really good at being able to watch what people are doing. If you've got a bunch of people doing the same technique to a count, you can work your way up and down your lines, checking on it, which is really good. Especially like in my situation, I'm a lone coach, so it's just me. Even the people I have assisting, on the occasion, would rather not assist anyway, and they'll miss things that I won't, or they'll willfully ignore them. So, you know, it's one of those. So it's good for that, spotting those basics. It's great for reinforcing some of those basic principles of fitness as well. So, things such as hand-eye coordination, you know, learning to time movements between different body parts. Wow. You know, learning to coordinate that as well. It's no mean feat. So you've got that. It's a really good way to teach those basics to much younger students and beginners. Although I'll be honest, I think most people with half a brain, adults and that especially, would prefer to err more on the side of hitting stuff than hitting thin air. So I think that's a pro and a con, because you can work those very basic fundamental skills. You can learn the gross and fine motor skills required for them with very little risk. And if it's done right, it can reinforce balancing stances and stance transition. Although again, that is another subject, because stances are a weird subject in karate, because you've got people that will be very much sticklers for stance, having people rooted into them all the time. They actually don't spend a lot of work moving through them, so you know, the whole point of stance is that they're all transitional. You know, you don't stand in a stance waiting to fight something. You know, we're not in those 70s kung fu films where, you know, you pose for a bit and then you start working in time with your partner. So yeah, you've got that as well. But overall, there's a few pros. I believe that there's a lot of cons. So one of the biggest problems with Kihon as a practice is its inability to teach the most fundamental part of what striking is for, and that's hitting stuff really hard. Okay? If you want to learn to hit stuff really hard, you need impact tools. You need pads, you need punch bags, makiwara, you know, that kind of stuff. If you want to hit stuff hard, you've got to hit stuff hard, yeah? And you've got to build that up. So one of the common problems you'll find, people that have done excessive amounts of Kihon and don't hit pads or bags, is this. They get weak wristed, especially if there's over-importance on stupid, and I do mean stupid minor details, like that. At the end, you know, and to be this angle and that kind of stuff. There are ways to train, particularly rotation in a strike, Yeah? But you wouldn't normally carry on rotating on contact unless you really knew what you were doing and what kind of target you were trying to hit. Yeah? And even then there's risk. But if you get somebody that's never hit anything and they hit something hard, especially if they've not trained their weapons, their tools to be hitting, landing on that strike, you know, that seiken area, they're going to get stuck, their hands are going to get mashed, their wrists will get hurt, they can jar elbows and shoulders, form ends up going all over the place out of them. So you end up with a lack of feeling, intrinsic proprioception on striking, and the ability to hit stuff hard. Because you can't do that out of thin air. Why not? Con number 2, injuries on the joints, wear and tear. Locking knees out on kicks. Locking elbows out on strikes at full speed is only bad for your joints. You actually do less damage to the joints and the connective tissue by hitting stuff. Yeah? Throwing arms and legs out into thin air at full speed and power is not so good over time. So, probably shouldn't do it so much. So that's another con. Also, false confidence in technique. As mentioned earlier, they're not used to hitting stuff. When it comes to hitting stuff, they may have a false confidence in that technique. You know, they've got a fantastic mind getting. You know, and then all of a sudden, they go to hit somebody with it. And because they've not worked on having an opponent to work with and around, that opponent moves or body isn't shaped like a flat surface or whatever. Or they've not worked on what to do if they miss, how to recover quickly and move around. Because they're used to working in straight lines, they're getting laid out by somebody that can work at angles. You know, move out the way. Gone. So you've got that. There's also there's a number of other things as well. In terms of cons, stances being a big one. Okay, there is very little in the way of practicality to getting people into these ludicrously deep stances. I can't actually do them anyway. I never learned to stand in these really deep stances and locked positions for long periods of time. And there's some movements through them which are just no good. You know, learning to throw Jodan Mayageri from like a really deep Zenkutsu Sudachi. Probably not the best thing for your hips. Now what, in terms of moving in perigeneration as well, you'll have people that will do enforce anatomically bad habits in you. Okay, so one of the worst ones is planting your feet. Keep the knees stuck into the floor. So, you know, take for example, you throw a cross or a Gyakuzuki. You tend to find that slightly wider than normal stance, and yeah, driving that back and in, which is great. There's a limit to it. You know, actually, if you allow that ball of the foot to come up, and rather than root and just spin on the spot, you allow your body to travel with it, you get a better strike. You know, and I think things like that are lost. And I mean, you can transition from doing that basic in Kihon and then do something different on a bag or a pack. But what would you want to work those two skills without a proper, reason for it? Why not reinforce the good skill in your basics? You know, twist, drive, all that kind of stuff. You know, working at angles, moving your head. You know, you tend to be getting people told, no, your head stays at this level and you move through that level without moving. Humans don't work like that, and if you do, you're an easy target actually, because you're going to get cherry picked up by somebody that can hit the target if it's stationary. You know, if it stays in one spot and it only moves in one plane, you're going to lose real quick. You know what, working out trying to think at the same time is difficult, even with some light work to be there. So yeah, you've got some pros and some cons. So leading the ramble on, how do you suggest you solve that problem? Well, you can take a bunch of different approaches. Okay, one approach would be to eliminate Kihon altogether. And just work on pads, which actually, in all fairness, I'm aiming preparing towards in future, because it's very easy for me to set exercise with some pads or a kick shield or something like that. Demonstrate what I want and actually get people moving backwards and forwards, get people moving downwards, you know, get these heads offline. But I don't know, that's something I've got to think about. My teaching style, what I teach and how I teach it's changing all the time. You know, hopefully for the betterment of my students, because you know that's always the fear if you're doing something that maybe you haven't done all the way through your formative years. It's quite scary because it's a little bit new to you. So you could eliminate Kihon altogether. And make sure your Kihon then though is relevant to exercise. So I saw a really good video the other day actually on TikTok for it was Arizona Practical Karate, I think it was. So you've got what is this sequence from? So the guy's doing a sequence. I think it was something like it was a Maigeri led to a Gyakuzumi, led to a Marati Uchi, or whatever. It was fun. It was from the Pinat Showdown. So you got that in the Pinat Showdown that leads to that. You know. I recognised it straight away, and it was actually, you know, it was a pretty cool way for him to be throwing the strikes on the back. The Marati Uchi bit, I looked at and I sort of wanted to modify a bit, because particularly after attending a Three Amigos seminar a while back, there was a mention on timing actually, and what certain moves in kata could be in relation to timing, and one of them, actually Marati Uchi, came up, and it wasn't so much a case of an assisted block, as we all know that's a load of rubbish, that does nothing, but it was more a case of timing, you know, so sort of marrying these hands together, so that rather than it being a case of a 1-1 attack, it was more a case of a 1 attack, you know, so you change that, you change the timing through symbolism, which made a bit more sense. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but it's an easy takeaway. You could very easily work from that kick, strike, and then, you know, whichever you will work towards. I thought that was quite cool. Because it was somebody taking, not specifically Kihon, it was moving to kata, but I mean, what is kata if not Kihon and Kihon linked together? Yeah, it was an interesting take on it. I thought it was pretty cool. It was something that I might explore myself, looking at combinations in kata and, you know, combinations of strikes. Maybe I need to put some arms or something, strap some staffs to the bag, so I've got targets to work around and resist. Might be a good way to look at it. So yeah, we had that. I lost track of what I was doing. What I'm talking about. So yeah, there was that anyway. You can change that, you can change it up like that. On the subject of kata, you could potentially do away with Kihon in lines altogether and have people working on kata. After all, kata works along the same coaching principles, just for movement, that Kihon does, but in some kata the movements can be more complicated, less user-friendly to start with, less beginner-friendly, I should say. And you know, sometimes people pick up kata and sometimes it scrambles their brains. So maybe not, I don't know. But then you also got you know, get people to work on their basics in other ways. So, you know, you start forcing just back and pad work. But then you've got to do something to get people not just learning that basic, but moving around it as well, you know, and finding out where to apply it, which is something that you don't see enough of unless you've got a right kumite going on, or you know, I don't really do 3K rounds, so I don't really do kumite. Most of the sparring I do in my dojo is a 3-5 ramble anyway. To grapple and all that kind of stuff. So we've got that. So yeah, there's plenty of that going on. I think there's pros and cons to it. I haven't really got all the answers. It's something I'm going to look at and think about more over the coming months and years though, because I'm at a stage now where I've got to think about, well, am I doing things that are practical, or am I doing things for the sake of tradition? And in some cases, tradition that wasn't really created in the first instance to really benefit people, to hold them in place, you know, make them easy to sort and that kind of thing. Because, you know, my ultimate aim as a coach, as an instructor, is to improve my students. You know what? I need to do my food. It's starting to get warm now. So, yeah, you've got a lot to think about with it, and you know, when it's such an established system, trying to find a new or better way to work is quite difficult. And trying to get your own habits to change, that again is very tough. So yeah, who knows really? But one thing's for certain, you know, I think Kihon's never going to go away in all karate. I think a lot of places will use it till kingdom come. They'll swear by it, it'll be on grading syllabi. It'll be a measure of technique and ability before actual fighting prowess, I think. You know, that's okay. There's nothing really wrong with that. But it has to suit the purpose then, doesn't it, you know? Like, for example, if if you're going to form heavy claw, you know, you're going to want the basic form of your students to be very crisp looking, aesthetically sharp and pleasing, you know. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And it can't be hyper detrimental to folks, even when fighting in some cases. But I think there's limits to crossover in that respect, particularly if your form is so ingrained that it prevents adaptation, you're going to struggle, ain't you? So, you know, swings around now, it's apples and oranges almost, because it's different strokes for different folks. But one thing is for certain, if you want to learn to hit on target and get good at fighting, you've got to do more of that. Even for kumite, there has to be that practice of the act, you know the rules inside out, just how you can take them and what you can do with them. Oh no, that was crap. Don't look again forward. That's better. So yeah, you got that. But for me, I'll spend more time doing this than I will basics now. Basics, Kihon. And I'll normally pair this with kata. Very stiff today as well. And you know, it'll change over time. Maybe even the last performance, each kata will change over time. Maybe I'll end up teaching multiple versions of the same kata by the time I'm an old man. Students that I'm teaching now will have a slightly different variation of Kusanku or Basso when the next generation comes along and they learn something slightly different. They go along and adjusted things because I've more fully understood and absorbed some principles. Will it mean that at any point any of them were wrong? No. Just that, you know, as all human beings, I wasn't perfect at the point of teaching, and maybe just needed to work on that a bit more. But as an instructor, you can only ever do what's best for your students, you know, at your best at that time. You can't see the future. So, I suppose something to work on like that, isn't it? So yeah, moving on from Kihon, recovery. So what I'm doing today is fairly light work. I mean, I'm actually barely sweating really, I'm not dripping. There's no pattern to what I'm doing, I'm just letting my body go fairly loose. Letting those things move. Mainly just to get blood moving, because what I want is a good stretch after this. Not an intense stretch, very gentle actually, but the more I am, the better I'll stretch. And then I'm going to get the Theragun on it after, so check this out actually, let me have a look here. We got this thing going. Well, at 34 minutes, we'll have to finish it up soon, so it's not going on. So we got, let's check that out. Let's see, what's that say there? Recover Pro. And it's got some other attachments in there. So yeah, it looks like almost like a really funky sex toy, to be honest. Most Theraguns like that do. You got different attachments. You know, you got like stuff for small knots, larger muscle masses. You got that's for your spine. That's for like some myofascial knots and stuff like that. I mean, tell me that doesn't look dodgy, you know. But yeah, it's a really good tool actually. It's really smart. So yeah, impressed with that. And all that going forward. I'm going to get the massage gun on it. Good practice should keep you relatively injury free. I don't get many injuries very often, not bad ones anyway. But when I do, I'm not a good patient with them, I'll be honest. I whinge a lot, moan a lot, more than I need to, you know, procrastinate around things, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you train well, you shouldn't end up with many injuries. Unless you're training competitively, you'll pick up more injuries for that because the intensity that you work at will pick up more. But yeah, if you are training, recover well, stretch after you work out, you know, just to help your muscles recover better. I recommend a Theragun if you pick up injuries easily, or if you just want something that can massage you really quick. It only takes about 60 seconds or so in a core muscle group, you know, a major muscle group, boom, up and down, and it's done most of its job already. You know, you don't need to use them for a long amount of time, and it'll help. I've been using that for less than a week and I've had some really good results already. I'm already a lot more mobile than I expected to be after that season up quite bad. So yeah, man, even a light sweat scrambles your brain. It's very difficult to think. But yeah, I'm gonna have a good stretch now, work on my recovery. I'll ramble on about something else probably in the week. I might start doing just small snippets on little things, you know, because I mean these videos are quite long. It's a long time to listen to me ramble on. So yeah, I say try to shorten them down. I ain't gonna shorten them down, that's a lie. Because I like to ramble and waffle. And this is a good therapy for me actually, because there's some things, because I don't get to talk to people, particularly when martial arts is concerned, very often, or as often as I'd like. And you know, that's partially my own fault. I don't reach out to people enough. And yeah, which I should do a lot more really, in terms of martial arts and discussing things, because my head's always buzzing with ideas all the time. Yeah, I just wish the people that were in my dojo when I wasn't strictly in charge of it were still around really. It'd be nice to have been able to